overlooked, which it was overlooked, February was a record for most GTA residential and volumes sold on the MLS ever. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Came on a good day today. I'm barefoot because we're about to walk along the burning hot coals and discuss, is Toronto real estate still on fire? We're going to look at the TREB stats that came out from February. And why do realtors and economists all have concerns about a housing bubble? And what is one of the major banks saying could happen in the next month or so? And how are bidding wars draining the Canadian economy? Man, we got a lot to cover today, and I'm glad you guys could make it. Coming off a wonderful weekend. I hope you guys were able to enjoy it. And we are now out of lockdown, which is fantastic in Toronto, except the case count. Let's not pay attention too closely to that. But this weekend, I was able to spend some time with my kids. We did a little bit of painting. Man, the Lord blessed me with some amazing kids, but not with any kind of art skills. So really, when it comes to painting, I just sit there and I get painted. I'm the canvas. It's like an episode of Bob Ross. I give her one of those like demon-possessed brushes and she beats the devil out of it. But anyways, quality time is spent, those hours spent with our family, as well as analyzing the local market. As Daniel Falk says on Twitter, I love this post that he's pinned to his account. I'm not really one to brag, but my daughter's first word was data. So funny. If you guys could, as we jump into this podcast, please subscribe, hit that like button to support the ongoing development of my genius children. And we're going to jump right into discussing, is the Toronto real estate market still on fire? There's no question it was on fire, but what is the latest? Starting with the Globe and Mail article called Toronto, Vancouver home sales soar as condo market rebounds. Low rates drive up prices. So I want to break down some of the key stats that came out of the month, starting with the number of sales. In the Toronto region, home resales hit a record for February, 52.5% higher year over year. How fascinating. If you think this time last year was not a cool market. COVID hadn't hit yet. In fact, it was on fire. And yet here we stand with sales up over 50%, with condos leading the way. Just a few months back, people would think condos are all but toast. Well, they are on fire in some ways. According to the Toronto Real Estate Board, condo resales in the city were 27% higher than in January. 27% in January, almost 30% in a single month. Quote, condo buyer confidence is returning. Condo rental rates are starting to increase, which we've discussed is coming, triggering investors to purchase condos again. The average selling price for condos in the city was still 6% lower than in February of last year, but 8% higher than in January. What a fantastic recovery we're seeing in the condo space. In fact, in the last 3 weeks, 416 condos have really ramped up in this sold over asking stat. Listen to this. We've now as I'm looking at these little charts here, what do we got? 40, looks like 45%, over 45% sold over asking. Just a few weeks back, we were sitting maybe a month ago, just over 20%. It's incredible how quick we see this bounce back happening in the sold over asking. And according to Scott Ingram, maybe it's early, but good news for 416 condo buyers, because again, these trends, they change monthly, but they really do change weekly. And to kind of get some insight on what could happen this week specifically, active listings may have ceased falling. So we were seeing a very fast and rapid drop. I guess those two things are the same thing in condo listings. Well, it would seem now they're up only 4 listings, but not dropping as rapidly. Hopefully that's a good thing, because we're seeing those days on market reaching a level pretty much matching the low rise. Unbelievable. What about price? Home price index, which is adjusted, of course, based on the different housing type. It rose 15% year over year across the Toronto region. The biggest price increase outside the city, biggest prices were outside the city, and specifically Simcoe saw an index up 35%. And Durham index was up 29%. So we see these trends, we see success in the Toronto market, but we see far more success in the 905. It seems like a good time, though, to list your place. I mean, if you're just trying to sell. But here's a secret when you're listing your place. Hire a pilot. Pilot, that's right. Flying an airplane, paint your house. Trust me. I did it. I tried it. This is from personal experience. It turns out they're really good at it. They do a great job with the landing. Moving on. Now Toronto.com. Townhome prices in Toronto shoot up 12% in 1 month. So let's get away from the condos. Let's start talking about some of the other segments. The city's real estate market refuses to chill and is making headlines south of the border. We're going to talk about what that means. Toronto prices, look, if we look at the semis, they rose 12% and townhomes rose 12% in February, month over month. Month over month. Those are numbers that should be annual, but they're monthly. Crazy. Detached homes in Toronto up 6.5%. This is unbelievable, guys, that we're seeing the success we are. It seems unnatural. It really does. The rising price in Toronto and across Canada, listen to this, despite a pandemic and its economic impact, inspires talks of a bubble. Don't worry, not going to dive into that right now. We're going to talk about a bubble in just a moment. But the New York Times weighed in. That's right, on the Toronto market, noting the sale of a one-car garage in Toronto listed for $729,000. So I pulled up that listing, and this is an article from CTV News. Dilapidated. I always call it dilapidated, but it's dated. Dilapidated. Garage hits for $729,000. Listen to this. Danforth Village, 20 feet wide by 100 feet deep. It was actually listed in 2019 where it also drew attention. It was listed for nearly $600,000. Well, guess what? They literally didn't touch it since this 2019 listing. And it could make an additional $130,000. It's like, what's the name of that painting in the Louvre? You get arrested if you try and touch it. Can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like that. Then let's look at the 905. Let's go outwards because clearly the 905 is the heat. Year over year sales growth in the GTA was driven largely by 905 sales. Detached and semi-detached homes in 905 were up 27.8 and 25.6%. Wow. Reaching 1.3 and 932,000 respectively. It's crazy. The 905 is doing really well. And John Pasala summarizes it like this. The 15% increase in prices was driven entirely by low-rise houses, which were up 22%, with condos showing no growth in prices, right? House prices, low-rise in the city of Toronto, were only up 12% compared to 23 to 36% in the suburbs. That really summarizes what is going on in our local market. In fact, if you look in Toronto, the average price right now last month in February was $996,000, just shy of $1 million. In the GTA, it is now more than $1 million. I remember as we rounded into 2021, Trev was saying we're going to reach $1 million this year in the GTA, and people were like, whoa! 2 months later, done. Wow. Trev president Lisa Patel warned that trouble was on Toronto's horizon because of disparities between supply and demand that are already shifting conditions to favor sellers. Listen to this quote. It's also evident that the supply of listings is not keeping up with demand, which could present an even larger problem once population growth picks up following widespread vaccinations later this year and into 2022. If this is how it is now, woo! Scott Ingram actually posted, he said, overlooked, which it was overlooked, February was a record for most GTA residential and volumes sold on the MLS ever. February 2021 sold 11.47 billion in residential transactions. The next highest, March 2017. Funny enough. I don't know about you, but finding out February was all-time record for sales in history felt like a bucket of paint almost fell on my head. I nearly died. But what about this work from home trend? We're going to get into bubbles in just a second. Hold your bubbles. BlogTO.com. A third of Ontario homebuyers say they move further away than planned because of COVID. Very fascinating stats. People are moving outwards, but further than they really expected. According to a new study from Zoocasa, approximately 1/3 of people who bought homes during the pandemic ended up buying out of the city and further away than they were expecting to go. Here's some stats. Fun fact. Out of respondents who bought a home, 32% purchased a property in a neighborhood, city, or town they wouldn't have considered prior. Out of that group, 70% bought a property in a location, quote, much further or a bit further, and 53% bought a property in a location with a, quote, smaller population. So they're moving outwards and by quite a bit, it would sound. But why? Why are they doing that, crazy little ones? Price? Size of the home, availability of the green space, and they say access to takeout and delivery from local restaurants as well as grocery. These are some of the reasons. But listen to this quote. What about the impact of low interest rates. 82% of aspiring buyers in Ontario believe low interest rates have driven up prices of homes. Because they have. Why is that not 100? But listen to this. 31% of them say low interest rates have made them more interested in buying a property, and 23% say low interest rates will cause them to buy a more expensive property. Interesting. Fun fact, I don't know about you, but painting my first house was like a rite of passage. I remember doing it. We did 4 out of 5 floors. Now it's something you need to move miles away to experience. And you know what they call a dream about paint? A pigment of your imagination. And it's just that for our next generation of buyers. Let's get into talking about a bubble, shall we? Why do realtors and economists alike fear a bubble? Why is it so scary? TorontoSun.com article, opinion piece, Toronto housing prices have become detached from reality. Whew. I think so. Here, listen to this. Chris Capches, CEO of real estate brokerage Chestnut Park Real Estate, said during this week's virtual office meeting, what we are witnessing in real time is the, quote, complete untethering of fair market value from the economic factors responsible for establishing fair market value. House prices have entirely detached from reality. Kinda. How surreal is this moment? It's almost magical. It's like that one time I was painting my boat when this little dolphin, he swims up by. I get a little bit of paint on his fin. So beautiful. Don't worry, environmentalists. It wasn't on purpose. Shut up and move on. But here is a cry of the realtor from this article. I think this is a great little love letter from the real estate professionals to the rest of the public. Listen to this. I have done this long enough that I can walk into a property and see past the pretty on-trend white kitchen, freshly painted basement, mechanical room, and hone in on the potential issues that demand further inspection. I can triangulate their budget with their wish list and a proverbial bird in their hand. I can mine MLS in order to send them a barrage of comparable sales we can analyze as a means of determining fair market value. What I can't do is advise on strategy when it appears the market is no longer driven by logic. What I can't do is predict where the market will go and for how long. What I can't do is sufficiently prep my clients so they can stay calm, cool, and collected when the market is no longer rational. Love this article. Anyone who thinks real estate agents are rubbing their palms together with glee at all this probably isn't speaking to many real estate agents. So good. So good. Y'all assume greedy agents are loving these moments, but realtors are painted in such a bad light. My goodness. But we're like pro con artists, pro and the con, like good and bad, you know? You can insult our painting, but we just brush it off. The Star.com had a different angle. By all objective standards, it's a bubble. That's what they say. Even realtors can say accelerated prices and sales of Toronto area homes are worrying. Speaking to Jason Mercer of Treb, quote, looking forward, the intervention I'd like to see, because there's going to be intervention, would be on the supply side so we can start to see more balanced market conditions and a moderate pace of price growth over the long term. I don't really agree with that. We'll talk about that right here. Treb sees the issues as supply. I would agree with John Passalis when he says it's more of a massive demand issue right now. I mean, it's both, but the demand can't ignore that. People are confusing, John says, inventory with supply. The issue today is not that, quote, sellers don't want strangers walking through their homes in a pandemic, and this is causing people to hold off listings. New listings last month were up 40% and have been by over 30% since June. So people are listing their home. That's not the problem. That's not the problem. Problem's not supply. It's supply and this bigger issue, demand. New listings is the, quote, supply metric we need to look at. New listings, inventory, the number of active listings for sale in the market is low because demand is outpacing supply. Sales in February were up, as we said, over 50% over last year and up 100% since February 2018 and 2019. So sales, demand, is really what seems to be driving this market to new heights. The 905, though, if I look at the numbers, does look a lot like 2017. Area code 416 Home had a post here, and they said this: the gap in average prices of detached versus condo apartments, so this kind of metric of comparison in the 416 is up over $1 million again for the first time since, get this, April 2017. So fascinating. If you were just kind of as an elastic band comparing the low rise or the detached versus the condo, when there seems to be this break point where all of a sudden it shoots back. I mean, if that is in fact the case, it's intimidatingly close to 2017. It really is. But they say even more listings come up in the spring, and buyers fed up with losing bidding wars step out of the market. Pasalis doesn't think real estate will tank. Unlike 2016, 2017, this frenzy isn't being driven by investors, although that could be a factor in the rebound of downtown condo sales. I disagree. Maybe the investors aren't putting money in, but I do think there's a trend, which we'll talk about in a moment, that the investors, in a sense, are still actually impacting things that are happening. But here's an idea they give to cool the market. One cooling option for government would be to raise the requirements for income property investors. Get those properties quick. Things might change. It may be the next generation of buyers who are most at risk from the current acceleration in home prices. I'm not sure how, if ever, they're going to own a home. Or in other words, how many Gen Zs does it take to paint a wall? Depends how red you want it. But I love this point from Ron Butler from Butler Mortgages. What things have really changed in 25 years in mortgage? I think this is a real play investors are having in our market without even knowing it. Here's a big change, he says. Today, when people buy a move-up home, they often keep their first home as a rental. 25 years ago, it almost never happened. Like, never really, he says. So people would move. Now, we're buying without moving. Maybe that's the issue. I mean, it's going to be so difficult with the stress test to get a mortgage again later. You're better to keep what you got. And people are doing that. And so in a way, investors are indirectly impacting the market. Anyway, just some food for thought. Not sure how hungry you were. BetterDwelling.com. Another article talking about this bubble. I feel like if you say the word bubble enough times, it really helps the analytics. Bubble. Canada tried to stop real estate prices from falling and created a bigger bubble. Enunciate the word. But here's a brief list that Better Dwelling gives. A fantastic list as we look at the measures that really pushed prices to new heights in 2020 into 2021. Here we go. Number one, Bank of Canada cut interest rates 3 times. In March 4th, 2020, the overnight rate was 1.75. Today, it sits at 0.25. According to the Bank of Canada, it takes between 6 to 8 quarters, that's 18 months to 2 years, to feel the full impact of a rate change. Watch out. Buckle your seatbelt. So they say, now are we stuck? Well, there was an interview BNN Bloomberg published here with Benjamin Tal from CIBC saying, we've never been so sensitive to the risk of higher interest rates. If that's true, that really limits our ability to fix things by increasing interest rates. We'll talk about what other options are currently available. Number 2 thing that happened, Canada eased the mortgage buyer stress test. The rate was 5.19 in 2020, March. Now it sits at 4.79, which is a really interesting time to make things easier to buy a house in times of turmoil. Anyways, number 3, the Bank of Canada bought billions in mortgage bonds, which we tracked in January 2019. The BOC began to add CMBs, Canada mortgage bonds, to their balance sheet. We've talked and mapped this out. This move suppressed yields, injected billions in liquidity into the system. Number 4, banks didn't have to put aside money for mortgage deferrals. Unlike other places, Canada didn't require a reason for payment deferrals. You just get it. In fact, 16.7% of mortgages at member banks were granted payment deferrals. And as we map this out and talking to a lot of you who are investors, it was more for fun anyways. It was precautionary. Number 5, Canada more than doubled lost income. What did that? Mr. CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. The government ended up replacing lost income with almost 3 times the number of income that was lost. We overdid it. We overpaid everybody. You're welcome. Thank you, Canadians. Make sure you vote Liberal next election. Number 6, banks get a $300 billion injection of credit liquidity. I had to read this a couple times to fully understand what's going on. To be honest with you, I didn't even know this was going on. But listen to this. New info alert. The domestic stability buffers are extra cash the largest local banks have to put aside. In December 2019, pre-COVID, domestic systematically imported banks, DSIBs, were told to raise buffers. In a note from OSFI, the banks were notified to raise the buffers from 1% of risk-weighted assets to 2.25. This was to go into effect on April 30th, 2020, giving them a few months. So what was supposed to happen is you're supposed to kind of raise this buffer. You're supposed to create this buffer. And they did. And it was supposed to kind of be ready by April 30th. Well, March happened. And when COVID hit, March 13th, OSFI announced they were reversing the measure. So all of a sudden, you've got all of this money kind of there as a safety net saying you don't need that anymore. Where did it go? Largely mortgages. There you go. Don't get mad at me for calling it as I see it. I'm that type of guy. I told my wife she was painting her eyebrows too high. She looked surprised. But the Fed failed. They failed. In March, the government thought the world was going to end, at least for real estate, and the Bank of Canada was expecting arrears to rise over 300%. This is what they say to wrap up this article. When the world didn't end, they had already delivered a, quote, response to fix it. The average home price didn't drop by 11% like they thought. It increased by 23.5% over the past year. If you think the CMHC forecast was bad, you should ask the Fed how they determined the amount of stimulus needed. And then we sit back and we wonder, how is the demand so high? Maybe it's a supply issue. Let's address that. And I saw a Realosophy post comparing the price to rent ratios, price to income ratios. We are beating 2017 in all of these cases. I mean, guys, things are looking a lot more like 2017 than any other year if I were to kind of map it out. Just things to think about. So is now the time to fix it? Maybe we should try and fix it. Well, CP24 says Canada's housing market is clearly overheated, but policymakers aren't intervening. Canada's red hot housing market has become a bonfire, spurring comparisons to earlier bubbles and prompting calls for cooling measures. Do it. We're kind of doing it on the show today too. Do it. But policymakers are standing back, unwilling to intervene for fear of undermining Canada's still fragile economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Very fast do things go from, we're not going to do anything to mess this up, to, yeah, we're doing something. And that will mean potentially major psychological impacts, especially if the overall impression in our market is that we are in a bubble. A bubble. What could happen? Here's some options. We talked a few podcasts back about New Zealand and some of the things they're doing. But one of the ideas they had here, similar in parallel to New Zealand Central Bank, is a 40% equity down payment for a rental purchase. You don't get it for 20% anymore. It costs you a little bit more. Another idea, housing affordability advocates, meanwhile, are calling for tax changes to target investors and rethink of an exemption that allows homeowners to pocket all profits from the sale of their primary residence. Maybe we'll just do a primary residence exemption. I'm sure that'll go over well, especially if we have an election in 2021, which doesn't seem to be happening at this point anyways. That's also something to keep in mind. Politics. Man, all of these things are so beautiful. It's like a big, fat, ugly puzzle. Something, though, has got to give. Give average painters a shot at the Toronto real estate canvas. A Picasso. That's what I call the average Toronto painters. But it's my belief that several ideas are floating around us, even though the central bank refuses to admit it. You know they're talking about this, right? Right? I mean, even Scotiabank thinks so too. Listen to this. This is a Better Dwelling article. Canadian real estate may get cooling measures as early as this month. This month being March 2021. One of Canada's big banks expects cooling measures for real estate. Derek Holt, Scotiabank's head of capital markets economics, sees the spring budget including cooling measures for real estate. Man, he feels the next budget likely includes measures to cool the market, which can come as early as the end of the month. Boy, oh boy. We're also seeing Canadian home permits increase over 7%, they say. Month over month. Sorry, that's a 7% month over month. It breaks down at 15.1 month over month for singles and 4% month over month for multiples or multiplexes. So interesting to see this amount of development coming in, kind of a lot of fear. And these are the things that Scotiabank in particular is kind of keeping an eye on. Quote, if Canadians are taking out permits and buying resales at such a pace during the winter, what does that say when the key spring housing market and vaccines arrive? Adding policy is arguably over easy and macro-prudential changes may be afoot in a spring budget. Maybe it's time we do something about this. Again, if there's an election, maybe not. If there's no election, which it seems for now there might not be in 2021, which can change overnight as well, maybe now's a good time to try and support locals. I don't know. We're going to get into some hot topics. Let's do it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button to support your local painter. And we're going to get into the first topic. How big is this place again? Real Estate magazine. Very interesting. It talks, I'm not going to get too much into the details, but this idea was there was a guy who posted that the property was listed more, like size-wise, than the actual property. Well, it came back that the buyer before closing said, I don't want this property anymore, you false advertised guy. Okay? So in this case, listen to this, fun fact. The court found the information about the size of the property was material to the bargain and was a big factor in the decision to purchase. The court ruled in favor of the buyer, rescinding the agreement of purchase and sale and awarding the return of the deposit to the buyer. Realtors, make sure you're promoting your property correctly. And Mr. Realtor over here got busted for painting a fake picture. Right? That's what you get. What do you have to say for yourself? I've been framed. All right. Toronto police arrest tenant couple who scam landlords for 10 years. Everybody's to blame these days. Listen to these guys. They moved into 8 different properties under rental agreements since 2010. And each time they moved in, they gave a first and last month and then stopped paying immediately after that. Quote, the man and woman would then provide a number of fictitious excuses, including loss of employment and others. And they've been working for the same companies for 10 years. And as a result, both individuals are now facing 7 counts of fraud, over $5,000, and now counts of false pretense. Lock them up, please. Remember a couple podcasts back, we talked about modular housing and how it's necessary to support and create affordable housing in our city. Good thing. Well, turned sour. Corner of Trenton and Cedarville Avenue in East York was going to build this thing, the city, and the plans have already received significant pushback from residents who say they have safety concerns. They refuse to, quote, allow politicians to bypass community consultation under the guise of social justice. We got a couple things about social justice here today on our show as well, but very interesting kind of dilemma. So it's located, a little bit of context, in the Yellow Belt, as it's called, which is an area that's zoned and would require a minister's zoning order, an MZO, to make their fall 2020 delivery deadline for this year, 2021. Well, MZOs is a big hot topic right now, as we've covered in our show. And in order for, they say, this is Housing New TO. They say, this is the response. In order for the city to reach its goal of creating 18,000 new supportive housing units by 2030, 2,000 new units like these modular housing sites need to be created every year for the next decade, making it impossible to avoid upsetting sub-neighbors residents in every case. What that tells me is we're going to be trampling on, we're going to be using MZOs quite a bit. This kind of overarching government superior stamping saying, screw it, it's the Yellow Belt. Sorry, I know it's your backyard, but deal with it. We have targets, guys. Now, not all developers are evil. I mean, we've had good ones come on the show. Some are there to actually support, they want to support the neighbors. I mean, why would you want to look at the ugly side of a guy's building you just put up beside your beautiful window? You looked at a tree, right? Yeah, painting a giant mural is going to cost a lot of money in the short term, but just think about the big picture. cbc.ca, to pave way for wetland development, Ford government retroactively changing laws. Still along the same lines of the MZOs, the Ford government is proposing a retroactive change to provincial law to clear the way for a controversial development project on a protected wetland, specifically in Pickering. The change in legislation was tabled by the government Thursday as part of an unrelated bill about expanding broadband internet in rural areas. They're trying to kind of get in there, allow these things to happen, and push this development through. A really interesting time to see these battles that are taking place between NIMBYs, not in my backyards, and MZOs and the Ford government. The provincial government, though, is going to have their way here. We're going to do it our way. You know what type of fuel both painters and politicians prefer? Whatever makes the van go. ctvnews.ca, right? We're talking about injustice. There's an article here. I think it's important that we highlight this one. There aren't enough protections for Black renters facing discrimination, real estate agents says. They have this story about someone who was looking, they're by any means qualified for a unit, but they were asked to send a driver's license. The landlord looked at the driver's license and for no legitimate reason said, sorry, you're not a good fit. Right? So then we have this whole issue right now of discrimination that's taking place, right? In Canada, listen to this. Housing experts say it's fairly rare for governments and universities to conduct studies examining landlord bias. A rare outlier was a 2009 study from the Center for Equality, Rights and Accommodation, which found that in Toronto, Black single parents, as well as South Asian households, have a 1 in 4 chance of facing moderate to severe discrimination when looking for rental properties. So based on this study, there is a legitimate issue. And the problem is it's a fine balance between freedom to choose to fill your property, but also equality. What an interesting debate. Not one that I can really add to at this time, but something that's up for discussion on how do we fix these problems. And it doesn't just stop when it comes to landlords and tenants. We see it in home ownership as well. TheGlobeandMail.com, a plan to boost home ownership by Black families. Black Canadians have a low rate of home ownership, having been shut out of the housing market by systemic racism. And even those who have adequate housing, like those who rent at Regent Park, miss out on the financial benefits of home ownership. And again, this is a whole discussion of like, do you have a right as a Canadian to have a property over your head and to live affordably, or to own a property? And I believe that this article takes a stance as you deserve to own a property. And you know why they say that? Because home ownership is such a damn good way to wealth. It is. Listen to this. So the housing bridge plan is going to have between 500 to 1,000 Black families with incomes between 40,000 and 85,000, and give them means to buy into Toronto housing. They've got big developers, Daniels, Diamond Core, Kilmer Group, Tridel, have all committed to this program. And what's going to happen is you're going to pay what you can, and then we're going to fill in the difference by grants and loans from philanthropy and all levels of government, and would cover the rest of the purchase price, and in exchange, retain a share of equity in the home. When you go to sell, then we'll be able to recycle that money back into the program. That's the plan. That's the plan. Now, when the median house in Toronto costs 10 times the median household income, we need programs like this, the one we're describing, to ensure that buying a home is not just for first-time buyers with wealthy parents. The dilemma is high house prices versus the inequality gap in Toronto. You want high prices. You want your equity to grow up. You want to go higher and to profit from your property. But we also need to maintain this balance of inequality. If that's the means to an end, everybody should have access to those means. I mean, that's two ships on a collision course, if you ask me. It doesn't matter if one's carrying red paint, the other is carrying purple paint. Both crews are about to be marooned. That's what we're seeing. ctvnews.ca. Wrap up our hot topics here. New COVID-19 cases in Ontario spike above 1,600 as stay-at-home orders lift in Toronto and Peel region. This should be interesting. Let's watch and see. Enjoy your freedom, folks. Let's get into our last and final topic. How are bidding wars draining the Canadian economy? Scott Ingram, that early 2017 feeling, more than 7 out of 10, 70% of 416 freeholds last week was using the quote holding offer strategy and was sold over asking. 40% of those sold over asking sales were 20% more over asking. 20% over asking. And they're all doing it. All of them. Slimy realtors, right? TorontoSun.com had a very interesting take on this. It was actually, comes from another article we referenced, but I thought this is a really good way of kind of explaining what's going on. We lament the blind bidding process wherein a prospective buyer can never be certain that they're not bidding against themselves. A process that often leaves even victorious with an icky taste in their mouth. True. Very true. Nonetheless, here we are with Nothing Special houses selling 40% over asking on day one on the market. A scenario that perfectly encapsulates this moment we're in a market driven by forces that were barely on our radar a year ago. Strategic underpricing so common as to render asking prices effectively meaningless. Prices are through the sunroof. You could buy a Tesla with the gains that we've experienced in the GTA this year. Praise the Lord. Who definitely has a special affection for cars, for sure. Did you know Jesus was a car painter? Bidding wars for Canadian real estate are a drain on the economy. At the risk of sounding melodramatic, I honestly, this is the article, believe that bidding wars are among the greatest economic inefficiency ever produced by the real estate market. In 2017, we saw a pretty wild market, and during that time, it was not uncommon, you guys will remember, for a lot of scenarios to happen where buyers were getting caught with these properties and they weren't able to close on them. It was equally common to see lenders rejecting deals based on comparative market appraisals that were being unsubstantiated. Like they're like, we're going to do an appraisal again. Like if you just did one, we're doing it again because we're not getting screwed like you are. That's your problem. The challenge is the seller's expected price is absolutely arbitrary. The seller, it's an arbitrary price, but also because it's a closed bidding process, the buyer is also putting in an offer that's equally arbitrary. Arbitrary. Yeah, that's the word. So it's almost to the point where it's like, I'm going to list your property. What's it worth? Doesn't matter. Don't tell me. So what's the problem here? The problem is that during the process, hundreds of hours, they say, are being wasted on viewings that ultimately don't translate into a sale. They go through all these numbers. I'll give you the fun numbers that they created at the end. But people are running around, they're looking at houses, wasting everybody's time for no reason. They say we are literally watching listing prices fall. Listing prices fall while sale prices rise. What's worse, the total percentage over asking is still increasing while the listing price is decreasing. The idea of a, quote, asking price has been all but replaced by a starting price. We've turned our real estate market into a silent auction. What a good description. And based on their math here, if we had over 3,800 GTA sales, they said it cost us $8 million in wage time spent on viewings. It also added unnecessary 267,306 GTA home tours during a global pandemic. I don't know. That's the closed bid. That's a closed bid option, right? The closed bid isn't directly responsible, though, for the inefficiency. The real estate brokerage is built on asymmetrical information, and a closed bid protects that. I mean, me as a seller, knowing your offers and you guys not knowing gives a lot of power to the seller, which naturally would push prices up. At least that's my thinking. But my thinking also includes, because we've been talking about this for years, and with this kind of becoming a problem once again, the closed bid process needs to, in my opinion, and will eventually change. It has to. I feel like it has to. This is crazy. This is something that it should not be taking place. And we know other countries are doing open bid processes. It's not like it's not possible. We'll see. The big question is whether something's going to give before Easter, right? Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Please hit the subscribe button. For every like on this video, I'll give $1 to some nonprofit organization. CS, I don't know, Clergy Sports Car Society. And I'm going to wrap it up here. But as a parent, I don't know about you guys, Easter's around the corner. I'm pulling out every idea to make Easter fun. This year, I'm saving the eggshells that we had from Pancake Tuesday, and I'm going to paint them to use for the egg hunt. I think it's an eggshell Lent idea. I'll see you guys next time. Take care and keep it real.